We're in the middle of the largest capitulation of this crypto cycle. It started yesterday when this message came out from Mt. Gox, or headline came out that Mt. Gox is actually beginning its repayments. Now, if you know anything about Mt. Gox, what you know is that they do have 141,000 Bitcoin that they need to return to people and potentially liquidate it. So it's no surprise that as soon as that happened, as soon as they started distributing, or as soon as news got out that they distributed their first distribution, the price of Bitcoin went down. We touched the COVID trend line. We went below 53,000, and we saw the largest capitulation of this cycle. In fact, a capitulation as big as FTX, maybe even just slightly smaller than FTX. Now, the big question is, this is for sure the biggest unlock of Bitcoin ever. It is for sure the biggest potential liquidation that Bitcoin has ever had since Bitcoin started. But how serious is this for the actual market, and have we actually hit the bottom? That is what we're going to be talking about today. Usually on Friday, we do a big Friday banter. Today, we had to interrupt that because today we have to talk about Mt. Gox and how much it's going to affect you and what you should do if you are still in the market. So lots to talk about today. Let's get the show going, guys. My best advice to you today is don't look at your portfolios. Just don't look at your portfolios. This is exactly how you'll feel if you do look at your portfolios. We got a big show today. Yeah, I know, guys. I know that image is absolutely terrible, but that's how you feel today if you look at your portfolio. I wasn't going to do a normal show today, but of course, with the Mt. Gox news, had to bring you guys a normal show. We have to discuss this Mt. Gox thing. We have to put everything into perspective. This is the biggest liquidation. This is the biggest capitulation since the FTX collapse. And here we are bringing you live, up-to-date coverage of everything that's going on. And I think there's a lot we need to talk about. So listen, if you're not already subscribed to the channel, join the 941,000 people that are subscribed to the channel. We're very close to getting to 1 million people. If you are here and you appreciate the fact that I'm working my ass off to bring you crypto love and to bring you these shows, even when I've got a Friday banter, I'm supposed to have a Friday banter today. Do me a favor. All I need you to do is I need you to smash the like button so that this show can go viral and we can get distribution of the show and everybody can see the show. So I see the likes going up very slowly. Let's beat yesterday. Yesterday was 2,200 likes. Let's see if we can beat that. With that out the way, let's actually look at where the hell we are and what's actually going on. Tell me in the chat how you're feeling, guys. Tell me in the chat how you're feeling. So this is where we're at. It's the biggest capitulation out that we've had in this cycle, in this bull market. It's bigger, or almost as big as the FTX liquidation. If you look at the numbers, the market cap is below $2 trillion. If you look at the number of 24-hour liquidations, it was over 650,000 liquidations that actually happened, which is very close. What happened? Well, we got the headline that Mt. Gox is actually beginning its repayments, and that's exactly what happened. We saw the transactions going live. We also saw a letter out of Mt. Gox, which was published on the 5th of July. It says the rehabilitation made in Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash to some of the rehabilitation creditors through part of a designated cryptocurrency exchange, etc., etc. They basically wrote a letter saying that they are distributing the Bitcoin. Now, strange that they did this on July 4th when the markets were closed and there was no one to scoop up all the Bitcoin. The ETFs weren't trading, the markets were closed, all the Americans were on holiday, and that is the day that the Japanese government or the Japanese liquidator decided to distribute the Mt. Gox coins. Anyway, be that as it may, here we are. You can see the first transaction. That is a transaction that spooked the whole market. And that is the amount of Bitcoin that they still have left to distribute. It's 141,687 Bitcoin that they have to distribute. At the price right now, these Bitcoin are worth about $8 billion. That's by far the biggest Bitcoin liquidation in history. Also, it is coming at a time when we also know that the German government is also liquidating $10 billion or $2.5 billion of Bitcoin. So you add those two up together, you got yourself $10 billion of Bitcoin that needs to hit the market. And that is what spooked the market and actually brought us to a trend line, a very key trend line that we've been holding since the COVID launch. If you draw a trend line on the Bitcoin chart and you go all the way up, you now get to a point where Bitcoin bounced exactly off the, what you want to call the capitulation or the panic event or the black swan event trend line, which kind of places this as a kind of black swan event. Funny enough, in Germany, one of the ministers actually urged the government to stop selling. And one of the reasons says diversification of treasury. Bitcoin offers a unique opportunity to diversify the assets of the state. This mitigates risks associated with excessive exposure to traditional asset markets. It's a long-term store of value. It promotes innovation. And actually ministers are in Germany writing to them not to be selling. So for those of you who don't know what 𝗕𝗏𝗡𝗧 is, for those of you who need some kind of refresher, what is 𝗕𝗏𝗡𝗧 and how did we get here? How is it that there is $8 billion or $7.5 billion worth of Bitcoin that need to be liquidated? Well, let's start over here. For those people who don't know, this is from Investopedia. 𝗕𝗏𝗡𝗧 was one of the first Bitcoin exchanges. The exchange operated between 2010 and 2014. It was domiciled in Japan. And at one point, it accounted for about 70% of all the Bitcoin trade. Now, in those days, the Bitcoin markets weren't as sophisticated as they are today. The systems weren't as sophisticated, and of course, exchanges weren't as sophisticated. And so this hack was constantly being hacked. It got hacked many times. Sometimes they managed to retrieve the hack. Sometimes they didn't. It says here, the cryptocurrency exchange in 2011, hackers used stolen credentials to transfer Bitcoin that year. And so this exchange got hacked a few times until eventually in 2014, it suffered a blow and it actually went into liquidation. That was 2014. That was 10 years ago. For 10 years, the liquidator has been dealing with the claims. Of course, this is one of the biggest claims that there's ever been, or one of the first Bitcoin claims that there's ever been. And for 10 years, the liquidator has actually been dealing with a fair process to repay the money. And here we are now, 10 years later, and 10 years later, the Japanese liquidator has finally made the first payments in a series of payments that are going to get paid out of the 𝗕𝗏𝗡𝗧. And so this has been a shadow on Bitcoin for the last 10 years. For 10 years, we've known that at some point the 𝗕𝗏𝗡𝗧 coins are going to hit the market. And it just so happens that here we are in 2024 and the 𝗕𝗏𝗡𝗧 coins are finally hitting the market. Now, let's talk about how bad it is. And I'm going to show you probably what is the biggest opportunity of your lives that you're going to see today. So in other words, the biggest opportunity to change your lives that you will see today, I'm going to show you that today. And it doesn't come down to buying, believe it or not. It doesn't come down to buying. So this is going to be big. But first, let's actually ascertain or assess how big is 𝗕𝗏𝗡𝗧 relative to everything else that is going on. Is this drop warranted? Is the drop to the COVID support line, this trend line ever since COVID, that we went, is this really that bad? And let me tell you that at face value, when you look at 141,000 Bitcoin, according to Arkham, which is what they have, this is by far the biggest liquidation in Bitcoin's history. There is no doubt about that. And I actually want to give you some perspective about how big this Bitcoin liquidation is. If you think of all the Bitcoin that MicroStrategy have bought, so MicroStrategy in total have bought, since Michael Saylor started buying, 226,331 Bitcoin. If you look at and that means that this number of coins is 62%, over half of the coins that Michael Saylor has bought for MicroStrategy in the entire lifetime since he became a Bitcoin bull. If you look at the number of Bitcoin held by all the ETFs, the number is 867,000 Bitcoin. So you can see that it's about 16% of all the Bitcoin held in the ETFs. If you look at the ETFs, the Bitcoin held by BlackRock, what you can see is that the amount of Bitcoin that 𝗕𝗏𝗡𝗧 has is 46% of the total Bitcoin held by BlackRock and 51% of the total Bitcoin held by Grayscale. It's also just less than 1% of the total Bitcoin actually ever mined into existence. So this just gives you perspective about how big this potential dump can be. I mean, you're pretty much talking about 46%, almost half of the total Bitcoin that BlackRock have ever bought are now going to be dumped onto the market by the Mt. Gox liquidator. So at face value, this is a very, 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 very scary number. But if you look at the document that was published by the liquidator, the rehabilitation plan, what you will realize is that everything is not as it seems on face value. And I'm going to show you why. Here's a great summary of it. So if you look at the total number of coins that they have, they've got 141,686, which they're going to start repaying off. Now, let's just clarify what happens. They're not all going to be distributed in one shot. In fact, the liquidator has broken up the rehabilitation plan into distributions, which happen in 3 phases. The first phase is what they call the early payment phase, which is July to October. So 4 months, July, September, July, August, September, and October this year. The intermediate payment is to the final creditors, and the final payment is happening 3 years later. And as far as we understand, right now, the first payment, the early payment, is about half of the total payment. And that is being paid to individual creditors, credit funds, exchanges. And remember that when Bitcoin was trading at $600 when the hack happened, and so anyone that is holding their Bitcoin is up 100x, which means that they're probably going to be selling. So now with that in mind, let's relook at our spreadsheet and say, let us say that right now, it's not the full 141,000 that are actually getting distributed. In fact, right now, what we know is that it's only about 71,000 coins which are actually being distributed. And if you take the same spreadsheet that we made, that equates to 31% of MicroStrategy's holdings, not 61%. It only equates, and this is for me the key number, it only equates to about 8% of the total ETF buying, which has happened in the last 6 months or 7 months, 6 months. It equates to 23% of what BlackRock is currently holding and 25% of what Grayscale is currently holding, and a total of 0.36% of all the total Bitcoin mined. So when you start realizing how many they're going to sell in the next 4 months, what you realize is this number becomes much more palatable and much easier to swallow by the market. Because if you kind of think about it, the ETFs have been going for 6 months and they've accumulated about 867,000 Bitcoin. And now they've got to accumulate in the next 4 months, they've got to accumulate another 8% of the Bitcoin. So when you break it down like that, you say to yourself, hold on a second, that's like 2% per month of what they've bought up until now, is what they have to buy to absorb the entire Mt. Gox supply. So that is with the first assumption in place. But there's also another assumption in place. And I actually tweeted about this assumption. I said, well, does anybody know how many of the coins that of the Mt. Gox coins were actually sold to claims agents? Now, I'll tell you why this is important. What is a claims agent? A claims agent is a person or a company who would go to people in Mt. Gox over the 10 years and say, look, you don't know how much and when the liquidator is going to pay you. I'm willing to take the gamble. And in order to take that gamble, I'm going to buy your coins. I'm going to buy your claim. And then when they pay you, I'm going to pay you immediately. And when they pay you, I'm going to take the Bitcoin that they pay back. So people who have a business in buying other people's claims. Now, we don't know what percentage of the Bitcoin in Mt. Gox remains with holders and what percentage of holders capitulated along the way and are going to sell their claims or have sold their claims to a claims agent. Why is this important? It's important because any claim that is sold to a claims agent, the claims agent is probably going to get the coins, and because the claims were hedged, in other words, when I say hedged, they bought the claims and they shorted the future, probably the futures. And so they don't really care about the Bitcoin price because they basically closed their position. And all they care about is the differential in funding rate. In other words, from the time they bought the claim, their total exposure is the amount of funding that they paid up until the date of distribution. So if I had a 100 Bitcoin claim, I could sell it for, let's say, 50% of the price. And the claims agent would then hold the Bitcoin to 100% of the price. And so what we know is that there's going to be multiple types of holders. The first holder is going to be a claims agent. The claims agents are going to get the Bitcoin, they're going to dump the Bitcoin, and they're going to close their short position. Very important. The last part is very important because that means that they're going to have to close a whole lot of shorts on the futures market. Very, very, very important. Number two, there's a different type of holder. The type of holder is a just Bitcoin holders. So holder number one, claims agents. Holder number two, people that are Bitcoiners. Now remember, if you were here in 2014, you were a hardcore Bitcoiner. If you were here that early, you're a hardcore Bitcoiner. Now there's a big question about what you're going to do when you get your Bitcoin, whether you're going to sell it or whether you're going to hold it. Now, there have been polls that have been run in multiple Telegram groups. And in the polls, in multiple Telegram groups, it is estimated that 10 to 20% of users said that they were going to sell. Now, there's a big difference in what people say and what people do, okay? But they're saying that 10 to 20% of people said that they were going to distribute their Bitcoin. And so what I did was, I took the spreadsheet and I added another assumption. I said, well, okay, we know 71,000 Bitcoin are going to be distributed. We know that only 50% of the coins that are going to be distributed, let's just say 50, we can change the assumptions and you can change the assumptions as much as you want. And that means that there's only going to be 35,500 Bitcoin, which are going to be liquidated in the next or over the next 4 months. Now, let's see how that measures up. That's only 15% of what MicroStrategy's bought. It's only 4% of what all the ETFs. In other words, if all the ETFs just buy one more percent every 1%, then over 4 months, that's the 4%. It's 11% of the Bitcoin held by BlackRock and 12% on Grayscale. So what originally looked like a very scary picture, when you actually look into the data, what you realize is that it's actually not as scary as people think. Now, on top of that, there is another thing that you need to understand. This is not new to the market. Not new at all. We've known that Mt. Gox is going to be distributing this a long time. You can almost say that it's the same as a token unlock, where you know that the tokens are going to be unlocked. It just, in this case, you don't know when the tokens are going to be unlocked, but you knew it was happening sometime within the next 12 months. So even though right now the market is reacting as if it had no idea that this was going to be dumped, you can now see that the market is now staging a comeback because people are saying, hold on a second, we knew about this. This was probably the most obvious event in history. It should be to a large extent priced in. And actually, if you analyze the data, what you realize is that it's actually not as bad as people make it out to be. It's not this catastrophic event. And in fact, it's only 4% of the total amount of the ETFs that needs to be absorbed in the next 4 months for this to actually happen. So this is what happens when you have a calm head and you start really analyzing what the numbers are about. You go from a potential of 16.34% of all the ETFs buying to 4% of all what the ETFs have bought in the last 6 months. And you're saying that all they need to do is buy 4%, absorb 4% extra in the next 4 months, and there should be very little market impact about this. I think part of why the market collapsed so badly is because they did this on a day on July 4th. And on July 4th, there was no one to buy. The Americans were all away. The ETF market was closed, and the ETFs can't actually go and buy the dip. And so I think that is what caused the market to panic. And so that's where it is. So let's quickly just look at where we're at, and let's just take stock of where we're at now that we have the numbers. And if you are enjoying this analysis, please subscribe, please like this content. I mean, a big hats off to our researchers for putting together all this content and getting all this information done so quickly today. Really unexpected show today. So where are we? We are here. We are back on this COVID capitulation line. I use this COVID capitulation line as the trend around black swans. And what you kind of say is, that when you get another black swan, that black swan should actually touch the line. And actually, funny enough, if you zoom into that line, what you'll see is that the bounce, the wick, was exactly at the touch of that line. And now we've already recovered to 56,000. So I don't know if you believe in the charts, in the voodoo of the charts, but you can see that there's definitely something going on there. Nevertheless, it was the biggest capitulation event and the biggest liquidation event since FTX. And remember, FTX was in the end of a bear market. This was in the middle of what some people are still calling a bull market. Right now, as it stands, funding rates are completely reset. In fact, not only are they completely reset, they are negative. If you look at the funding rates over here, the funding rates, the blue And the purple actually means that funding rates are negative, which means you're actually being paid to take long positions. Now, can you imagine how crazy this is? This is the capitulation event. If you look at the fear and greed, which we thought was broken, it's at 29. And when this updates in the next 10 hours, this is going to go much, much, much lower than 29. So this is what you can call the capitulation event of the cycle. This is the black swan of the cycle. This is the FTX. This is the COVID of this cycle. And you'll see in a second that we have these FTXs and COVID in every cycle. We always, always, always have a liquidation event. What you can see is that from a fear and greed point of view, this is the most fearful that the market has been in 2023. As Michael van der Pop says, he says, capitulation time, the largest liquidation event since Bitcoin's FTX collapse. Mt. Gox moves happened, and this is the one. Don't panic sell. Basic framework, read this. This is one of the best tweets that I've ever said. It's always a 4-year cycle dictated by Bitcoin halvings, but those 4-year cycles often have one or more anomalies. Last cycle, COVID crash made Bitcoin go way lower than due, return to the mean and violent expansion upwards. This cycle, ETFs made Bitcoin go way too high too soon, multiple millions, and then a cool off after. These anomalies get erased by the cycle catching up at some point. It's a slow and steady process. This is no exception, and I believe it will that we just finished purging the ETF advance. Hold on, bros. It's going to be perfectly fine. What he's saying here is that every cycle we get anomalies. We get anomalies down, like COVID, and we get anomalies up, like the ETF. And you'll see in a second that this is absolutely, absolutely normal, because in every cycle, we have a capitulation event. Now, if you look at the chart, look at this chart over here. This is the chart of the Bitcoin halvings. If you notice, every other halving has a capitulation event. You see there's a capitulation event more or less at where that block is over here. You also have the same capitulation event here. And we haven't had that same capitulation event in this cycle over here. And now we've had it. And if you want me to take you a little bit back, the capitulation event that you see over here is COVID. So that was the COVID. That was the March 2020 epidemic. This capitulation cycle over here, the one before COVID over here, is, I think it was a Bitfinex hack. It was a Bitfinex outage, and there was actually even one in 2012 around a big Chinese Ponzi scheme that was uncovered. So not only is this normal, but we have a capitulation event every single cycle. And if you look at the drawdowns, this capitulation is 25%, which actually in the big scheme of things is pretty normal for a cycle. If you look at every other cycle, in fact, I'd say that they've actually gone pretty light on us this cycle. If you look at these cycles, we're going -40 and -50. This tweet says, sentiment is at panic and anger, while this cycle is actually going exactly like the previous cycles. In fact, there's nothing different here. Even with this capitulation event and Mt. Gox, this cycle is playing exactly the same as every other cycle. In fact, it's not exactly the same. This cycle is actually playing out way, way, way better than other cycles. As per Benjamin Kahn's tweet, he says, at this point in the last 2 cycles, Bitcoin was still about 40% down from its all-time high. To put that into perspective, we would need to equate to 42,000 on Bitcoin if this cycle were going to be the same as the other cycles. So if we didn't get the ETF prop up, this cycle, we should have been theoretically at 42,000 in this cycle. Now we are at 55,000 and we've just capitulated. So when you put things into perspective, when you look at this tweet over here and you say, we get these anomalies and they get erased by, you get anomalies and these anomalies actually get erased. Now you know that, that we're just mean reverting, and that actually this cycle is the same as every other cycle. I read this tweet from Charles Edwards, which I think was one of the best tweets ever. Bitcoin's all-time longest winning streak has just ended, 427 days without a 25% drawdown. That beat the 2012 record by 63 days. Pretty incredible run. He says, pretty incredible run we've had and well overdue for correction. We haven't had a proper correction in the cycle. We hovered in this range for 120 something days, 130 days or whatever it was. We just hovered and hovered and hovered in this range. And Now we have had the correction, and this correction, all it does is just give us the normal corrections which we've had with the normal drawdowns. As Red Capital says, he says, here's a list of the Bitcoin pullbacks dating to the bear market bottom of 2022. 23%, 21%, 22%, 21%, 23.6%, 21%. The average retest in the cycle, 22%. Therefore, the current pullback is almost the average 22%. We're about 25% down at the moment. He also says, in 2015 to 2017, the cycle peaked 518 days before the halving, after the halving. In 2019 to 2021, 546 days after halving. If history repeats itself, we're going to peak 518 days to 546 days after halving. That would mean that Bitcoin would peak in the cycle mid-September or mid-October 2025. Earlier this year, Bitcoin was accelerating because of the ETF by 260 days. However, thanks to this 3 months consolidation, the rate of acceleration has dropped to 150 days. The longer Bitcoin consolidates after the halving, the better it will be for the resynchronization of this cycle with a traditional halving rate. So, pretty much what they're saying here is, this is just mean reversion. And this mean reversion just ensures that the cycle is healthy, that we're following all this, the previous cycles. It just ensures that the cycle is healthy. That's all it is. And we're now mean reverting, and that just means that we're going to get a much healthier cycle. Now, I'm going to give you some perspective, but before I give you some perspective, Josh, should we tell them about this huge opportunity that we have today? Or should we leave it for another day? You think you should tell them today? Okay, so then what I need you to do is, let me give you a link that you need to paste here. I'm going to give you a link that you need to paste in the description, but only when I tell you, okay? Because you can't give away what the opportunity is, okay? So only when I tell you, Josh, only when I tell you. All right, let's get into some perspective. Let's get some perspective over here. So a lot of people are asking whether this is the end of the bull market. And people ask us every time in the cycle. They say, in this cycle, we've witnessed the approval of Bitcoin ETFs, meme coin mania, celebrities launching their own altcoins. But what if that was it? What if we've already hit euphoria, now we're feeling complacent, thinking we just need to cool off for the next rally, but actually this market's cheated us and we're actually in a bear market? Truth is, the Mt. Gox thing is temporary. It has just brought us back to the mean reversion of the cycle. And someone says here, Mt. Gox is like the obsessive ex you're trying to get over that took most of your stuff. As soon as you're starting to move on, they randomly DM you and pull you back in. That's what Mt. Gox has been all along. Every time we have a market run, we get that stupid letter from Mt. Gox saying, oh, we're going to distribute tokens. Fucking distribute the tokens already and get out of my life. Come back and take your stuff and get out of my life. Get out of my life. Just get out of our lives. Chances are it's too late to short and too late to sell. You've missed your opportunity to short and you've missed your opportunity to sell. The real whales were shorting ages ago. You missed that. We didn't know why they were shorting, but now we kind of know they probably had inside information, or they were probably looking at the Mt. Gox thing. I tweeted something earlier, and when I tweeted this, the price of Bitcoin was 54,000. I said, we're either at or we're near the bottom, because I know what bottoms look like, and this is what the bottom is. This is what bottoms look like. Bottoms have capitulation. This is a capitulation event. And so the bottom, I really think that we're either at or near a bottom. James Van Straten says, I'm more relieved than anything to see the Mt. Gox news behind us. It's better for the industry as we can now move forward without the overhang. It's a similar scenario as the GBTC sell-off. Remember, the market absorbed 1 million Bitcoin much more deep and much more liquid than you can give it credit for. And that's the way that I feel. We've had this cloud of Mt. Gox on our heads for 10 years. It's time to face the music, to get the distributions, and to just let it play out. And we're finally getting the cleansing of the market that we actually need. If you look at the cleansing, the RSIs are back to under 30. This is what happened every time that the RSIs were under 30. Look, capitulation event, capitulation event, capitulation event, bang. Another one, and that's what's happening. As I said, whales were offloading in the past month, and I'm almost willing to guarantee that they're going to start buying again. I'm almost willing to guarantee that. So now you've got to be like the smart money. And if you look at what the smart money is saying, and I mean, here's two people who are smart money, Santiago and Chris Berniski. Buying, not selling, riding. Chris Berniski says buying some, not selling, riding. People are just buying. The smart money is saying, this is the buying opportunity. This is the capitulation opportunity. We were actually a thing. Fefe says, I promise you within 6 months, you'll feel horrible for not buying this. This is probably a repeat of the FTX collapse where you're going to kick yourself if you weren't buying that capitulation. You're seeing that more money is getting minted on USDC. Why? Because people are buying the dip. We did see Coinbase whales step in, and that's when the price actually started to recover. So Coinbase whales actually stepped into it, because remember today the US market actually is open, and they started buying. Although, I love this quote which said, the way these sell-offs end is when the sellers run out of coins. It sounds obvious, but the key is to ignore when the buyers step in. So what you want is you want the sellers to get exhausted and to run out of coins. And I don't know if it's going to happen in a week or a month, but what I do know is that the market has overreacted. It was launched on the 4th of July. And now we're getting the thing. I also know that if this carries on, the Bitcoin miners aren't going to be profitable. And if the Bitcoin miners aren't going to be profitable, then that's not so good. And that usually marks a local bottom. I think one thing we need to look at is we need to look at how the ETFs respond today. Because there's one of two things that could happen today. The first thing is that the ETFs could dump because they are panicked, or they could buy because they're going to be buying the dip. And so I think it's super important to see how the ETFs react, not only today, but actually Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday next week. Why? Because a lot of people took today as a vacation. So that is what it looks like when you look at Mt. Gox and you look at Bitcoin. Let's quickly shift our attention to altcoins, because I know that a lot of us are altcoin degens. It's not pretty out there. Don't open your portfolio. If you open your portfolio, you know what's going to happen, right? You're going to feel like this. I mean, it's terrible. Terrible, terrible, terrible. Don't open your portfolios. Trust me, don't open your portfolios. So, if you look at where the market is, the altcoin market, I mean, absolute capitulation. Just look at these monthly moves on tokens, 50% down on certain tokens. What I can tell you is that the Bitcoin dominance is not accelerating upwards, which means that people aren't losing faith in this market. In fact, what you can see that the Bitcoin dominance is actually slightly down, which means that the market is actually saying, hold on, relative to Bitcoin, we're not running to safety. We actually think that altcoins are actually probably slightly safer place to be, which actually kind of makes sense, because the majority of this problem specifically is around Bitcoin and not really about altcoins. Michael van der Pop says, Ethereum reaches the lowest RSI since the collapse of August 2023. Altcoins have reached their lowest RSI ever in this cycle. Here it is. That's the RSI. Lowest RSI in this cycle is now confirmed, and probably the best buying opportunity that you're going to get in this cycle. What it says here, it says the daily RSI on total 3 is 25.4. It's only happened 4 times in the last 4 years. You can kind of see what happened in the charts every single time that happened. This was in the bear market, and this is what happened when we started the bull market. So I think from an opportunity point of view, this is probably the best opportunity that you're going to get to buy. I think this is the final capitulation. I think we're very close to a bottom. If it's not the bottom, maybe there's another 10%, but there's not much more. There's not much more. And you won't actually ever catch the bottom. You won't actually ever catch the bottom. So that's the opportunity. The opportunity is to buy Bitcoin, to buy altcoins. I'm also going to show you another opportunity, which I think is probably a smart opportunity if you don't have a lot of money. And when I say you don't have a lot of money, if you run out of money and you don't have a lot of money to invest in your portfolio, I may have an opportunity for you with a company that we've partnered up with. So who is the company and what do they do? Let me show you. Let me just quickly open the correct page that you guys can see it. The company is, it's a huge, let's just quickly, hold on a second. Let me just get the right site. Okay, hold on a second. There we go. All right, so what is the company? The company is called Bitfunded. And what they are crypto proprietary trading desk. Now, how this works is very, very, very simple. If you don't have a lot of money and you don't have enough money to do a portfolio, what you do is you go to bitfunded.com. Now, there's a link below which actually gives you a whole lot of benefits. But what you do then is you pay $99 and then you start trading with a $10,000 notional portfolio. It's not a real portfolio. If you get 8% return on the first trade or the first challenge, and 5% return, you go through to a second challenge. If you get 5% return on the second challenge, the third challenge, you're working with real money. And when you're working with real money, you keep up to 90% of the profits and they get up to 10%, they get 10% of the profits. So again, how does it work? You put in $99, you trade, you get over 8%, the challenge resets. You trade again, you get over 5%, you then start trading with real money. The first 2 times you're trading with paper money. The third time, you're trading with real money. When you get to the real money, you get between 80 and 90, you keep 80 to 90% of the profits, and they keep the balance. Okay, so here's what the platform looks like. You can buy in using crypto or credit cards, and you can trade over 160 pairs. Obviously, just look at the liquidity. If you're trading small altcoins, just make sure that you've got exit liquidity if you want to be exiting. I think it's an amazing way for you guys not to wreck your portfolios. So amazing way for you guys not to wreck your portfolios. You go there, you play, you put in $100. That's all you can lose is the $100. If you draw down, I think it's 5% or 10%, then your challenge resets. But at least you don't then lose your whole portfolio, right? And if you are a successful trader, and you really, really, really are a successful trader, then effectively what happens is you land up trading with real money, and it's not your money; it's somebody else. It's somebody else's money. So if you want to sign up, and I reckon go and have a look at it. Just make sure you read all the terms and conditions, because obviously I haven't told you all the fine print, and I don't know if there is any more fine print. But I think that's up to you guys to go and look at. But literally, I think this is one of the places where you can, Josh, if you dropped it, there we go, Bitfunded, there we go, just click on the bitfunded.com. Also, there's a link to their Discord where they're servicing a whole lot of people. But go and check it out, because I actually think that this is actually a cool opportunity to, for $100, you could land up playing with 10,000. If you want to go bigger, you can go bigger. I mean, if you go with a $329 challenge, you can play with $50,000. If you go with $549, you get $100,000. So that's like the platform. Again, like if you're a good trader and you can pass the first 2 challenges, and I think in a volatile market, you probably could do that. Just be careful not to get wiped out, so to speak. Then I think you could be trading without actually seeing. Someone says, sounds fishy. This is what they call proprietary trading, and they have it in many other markets. It's just we don't have it very much in crypto. Oh, we've got a couple more minutes. If anybody wants, anybody's panicking, you got some Q&A. People talking about altcoins. Yes, I see that. It's terrible out there. Someone said, what the heck happened with DOP, Data Ownership Protocol? I mean, I was trading it earlier. So it went up to about 17 cents. It's now at about 13.3 cents. It is launched. So DOP is launched. Need dry powder. Look, again, with the proprietary trading software, you don't need a lot of dry powder. You can start off on the $99 challenge. That means you don't need a lot of $99. Remember, it's bitfunded.com, not the one.co. It's bitfunded.com. Click on the link below, because there are other links. I don't know if they scam links or not scam links, but that's what it is. All right, I will see you guys again on the weekend. So I'm going to drop a banter on the weekend. I've got a great banter with Yatsu and some others. I'm going to drop that for you guys on the weekend, and then I'll see you guys again on Sunday for the meme show. Until then, trade well, my friends.